Hey guys, welcome to the Mom Show. I'm your host, Courtney Doyle, and this is a place I am giving you permission to not have it all together. Welcome back to the Mom Show. My guest today is Becky Keife, and this is a lady who has a lot on her plate. So I know that you will be able to identify with her because moms are all so busy. She is a community and editorial manager for Encourage. She's a conversion copywriter. She's a wife. She's a mom of 3 spirited boys. She's also the author of a book titled No Better Mom for the Job: Parenting with Confidence Even When You Don't Feel Cut Out for It. We dive into that very topic. What does it feel like whenever parenting doesn't look the way you expected it to look? What happens when you're feeling defeated? How do we get out of that feeling of I'm not good enough? And Lord, why did you choose me to parent this kiddo? We also dive into anxiety. What does it look like to be a mom with anxiety and to have a child that has anxiety? So many things are covered in this conversation, and I know that you are going to be inspired and blessed with loads of hope and encouragement. Here's my conversation with Becky. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today, my guest is Becky Keife. And as always, I am going to turn the mic directly over to you, Becky. I want to hear a little bit about who you are and your family and what you do.
Thank you for having me. I am mom to 3. I have always called them spirited boys. Anyone else listening have spirited children, AKA strong-willed or all manner of adjectives for them. But part of my story is God gave me 3 boys in 3.5 years, which just rocked my world. I grew up in a home with mostly just my mom and my 2 sisters. So to be going from a house of girls to this house of boys, and gosh, was I not cut out for it. Yet my story is also one, and we'll talk about this, but just the Lord showing me that He did not make a mistake in making me the mom of my exact kids. So I'm an author. I write books and Bible studies. I love writing about motherhood and anxiety and the kindness of God. I also get to lead a wonderful online community called Encourage. It's part of the Dayspring family. And there I get to be part of the team that writes and edits and produces all kinds of things that help women live their faith. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I love that. And before we hit record, when you were sharing with me a little bit about you, we did chuckle because you said, and I like to take a nap. And after hearing all that you do, I was like, a nap is necessary because you are a very busy mama. And I know so many of the listeners can relate to that. Like a good nap for a mom is golden, right?
Oh my goodness, yes, like, I'm an avid nap taker, and I remember, like, when my youngest son was, like, growing out of naps, and I'd still ask him, "Buddy, like, maybe it's a good day for a nap," and he goes, "Mom, only babies and, like, moms take naps." And I was like, he goes, "And I'm not either of those." I'm like, "You're not entirely wrong, but yes, you will." I'm a big fan of a good nap, a good book, a beautiful walk, like, soul-filling for me.
Yeah, and it doesn't take long. Just like a little recharge is sometimes all we need to go back into facing what all the things we face as moms. One of the things that you shared with me was that, and you have a book about this, that you have felt like this child is too much for me. Am I the right mom for this
Mhm.
job? So let's talk a little bit about that because I think there may be a listener out there that's got a kiddo, like you said, that's spirited. I love that adjective. Boys tend to be more spirited, but hey, look, there's girls that are equally as spirited. I have several of each. But what do you say to the mom that's, man, God, you may have missed the mark here. I don't know that I am capable of raising this child. I don't know that I'm doing the best that I should be doing. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, friend, if that's you who's listening and you feel like, "Ugh, there's another mom out there who would do a better job if she were in my shoes." I want you to know that you are not alone. And I absolutely felt like that for so long in my motherhood, just feeling like there's someone else who could swoop in and know how to discipline my kids better, know how to love them better, know how to keep them safe better. And yeah, I remember so clearly the thought entering my mind, probably by the time even my first son was 2, maybe even less than that. And the thought was this: there's something wrong with my child or there's something wrong with me, but either way, we are not a match.
Mm.
And that was like, and then with that thought really came this like blanket of shame because I love my kid and I love being a mom. And yet I just wrestled with this feeling of we're not cut out for each other. And what do I do about this? And then add
Mm-hmm.
another baby 19 months later, and then another one crashed on the scene 2 short years after that. And I just felt like I was constantly drowning. And so what it came down to, I really realized I had to ask myself this very pointed question, and maybe it's a question that someone listening needs to ask too, is do I believe that God made a mistake? Do I believe that God made a mistake in making me the mom of my exact kids? And this is for us, whether you came to motherhood by birth or adoption or foster care, for however long a child is entrusted to your care, you are the mom that God has assigned. And so I do believe that God doesn't make mistakes. And so therefore, if I don't believe that God makes a mistake, okay, then what? Then I have to believe that he has a plan and a purpose for my motherhood. And even in the soul stretching experience of figuring out, okay, like, how do I then be the mom that my child needs? I came to start to really desire, okay, Lord, help me to see that you are with me. Help me to see that your desire is to equip me and help me to. I was so fixed on what I didn't have, but I had to start shifting my focus to God. Show me how you are moving. Show me how you are using me in my child's life. And that really was what was the beginning of a new season in my motherhood.
Mm. That there's listeners that are feeling that deep in their soul, and I can completely identify with you. Our second son was look, I have 6. There was not a handbook and the same handbook for any of them. You would think after you get to
Right.
6 that God would be like, "Hey, look, I'm gonna cut you some slack, and I'm gonna give you one just like this one." Number 6 is very similar to one of the others, but ironically, he's most similar to one of the most difficult ones that I raised. And I remember feeling very much like what you just said. I don't know how to discipline this kid. I
Mhm.
don't know. I, I adored him, but it was the same situation like what you're sharing. He was 9 months old when I found out that I was pregnant for number 3. And so here I was, super sick, pregnant for another baby, and dad had to sweep in and be even more hands-on with a 9-month-old because I was out of commission for a few months. And he always did better with my husband.
Mm,
Always did better with my husband. It was like he and I were oil and water, just butting heads all the time. And now, of course, he's 25 and we can laugh about some of those things. But I do remember praying and reading all the strong willed books. If it was written on a strong willed child, I read it. And I remember praying and asking God, you have to show me how some of these difficult situations with him, you will use in him for
mm,
positive, because
mhm,
right now all I see is negative, and it's
mhm.
mostly because he's not conforming the way I think he should, and a good bit of it was me comparing me as a mother to other mothers and comparing him as a child to other children. Did you find yourself doing that?
Oh my goodness, 1,000%. And I think that yes, I was comparing myself and my kids to both to a couple things. Yes, what you said about like to other moms around me, but also to like the ideal picture of my own expectations of like, this
Mhm.
is what I thought motherhood would be like or should be like. Like I love books, and so I picture like we will go to the library and we will sit crisscross applesauce and just pour over books for hours. That would be delightful. Yeah, but somehow at story time, I everyone else is like listening to the nice lady read the nice story and shaking their tambourine on cue, and my kid, I'm like, You're climbing on furniture and somehow you're breaking something, and I'm not a bad mom, and yet like why can't I control you? And so part of my journey and what I share in my book, No Better Mom for the Job, is learning to become a student of myself and my son and identify where am I comparing myself and how is that leading us to maybe unrealistic expectations for us? Maybe someone
Mhm.
else can do it, but like for us. And then therefore, how do I start setting boundaries that instead of breeding frustration will set us up for success in our relationship? For example, going to the park with 3 spirited little boys. Like, I'm like, going to the park, like, that should be easy. Okay, with my crew, not so much. And I remember this one time, like, I was so lonely in motherhood. I just wanted a friend. A newish friend invited me to come to the park. It was a park that we had not been to before, so that already made me feel anxious. But I'm like, I need a friend. Like, we can do this.
Yeah.
And so I think I just had 2 at the time. My oldest was a toddler, and then I had a baby in a stroller. And I remember, like, as soon as we're out of the car, he's just like beelining it, just like running off. And I'm trying to get the baby in the stroller and run after him. And then we find my new friend, and her daughter is sitting in the sandbox and sharing her shovels nicely. And quickly, like, this woman I barely know, I'm like, can you watch my baby? As I run after my toddler. And I spend the whole time running after Noah, and he's climbing to perilous heights on the jungle gym. And then I go
It
to,
just
of course, and so then I go to check in on the baby and try to have a half a sentence conversation with my friend. And then before I know it, somehow he has found a faucet and turned it on. And now suddenly half the playground is flooding like my kid. And I'm just, I, I can laugh at it now, but like in the moment,
Yeah.
I'm fuming, I feel defeated, and I'm like, why can't we just be like everyone else? In a very practical way, I had to recognize, okay, there's this pattern of going to new places or going to places without physical boundaries. And in a very practical way, I decided, okay, we are now only going to go to parks that are fully gated. We're only going to go to
Mm.
fully gated parks. There was a great park just down the road from us, and people were like, oh, do you go to Finkbeiner all the time? No, we do not. Because there was like 3 parking lots and a canal and a skate park. And no, like, I would drive like an extra 15 minutes to go to the park that had a full fence around the playground. Now, mind you, my children would still try to climb that fence, but at least it would give me a moment to stop the baby from choking on rocks or detach a nursing child or whatever it was. But I realized, okay, like, I can still take my kids outside. We can still go to the park. I can still invite friends to come and be a part of this experience with me, but I can make a choice ahead of time that is
Mm.
going to reduce that stress and help me honor who I am as a mom and who my child is. So that's just one example of ways that, like, okay, it doesn't matter that everyone else can go to those other beautiful sprawling parks. We're going to go to this other one because that's what my child and I need for this season. And that's another
Mhm.
thing that I learned, that boundaries are there not to confine us, but to really free us and to make choices that are seasonal and that they will change. Like, my boys are now 11, 13, and 15. Like, we could go to any park we want. They're remarkable young men. Like, we could go out to eat. They are responsible. They learned how to sit still. They did. It's true. In a time I thought that they would never do it. So I just want to encourage someone listening that figure out what works for you and your unique situation. And maybe you don't have a spirited child. Maybe you have a child who feels painfully shy to you. And maybe you go to a birthday party and that child is just like clinging to your leg and you're like, we could have done this at home. And you just like,
Mm.
want them to like to go out and play with their friends. Maybe for that child, a large group is overstimulating. Maybe they are going to do better with those one-on-one play dates. And we can think about things for kids in older seasons as well. But I just want to encourage you, like, don't, if you keep on finding this pattern of being frustrated or feeling defeated with yourself and your kid, do something different. Like, it's okay to do something different.
Mhm. And a lot of times it's going against what everybody else is doing. And so it's hard for you to step out and say, no, this doesn't work for us. When you're talking about that and the birthday parties, one of my girls, who is my most extroverted girl as a young child, now she's an adult. And so now that I see her, she's my kiddo that I'm like, I could drop her in the middle of another country. And within a week, she would have a set of girlfriends, a job, shelter, and be like, I'm thriving. But growing up, she hated birthday parties. It was
Mm,
so frustrating to take her to a friend's birthday party because like you said, she was stuck to my leg the whole time. If it was a skating party, everybody was skating, a jumping party, everybody was jumping. She was stuck to me and I was like, "Go." No. And about the time she would warm up enough, then the activity was done.
mm.
Now, I've got an upset child because I didn't get to skate or I didn't get to jump or whatever, and I'd be like, "Ugh." I've been
You
trying
could
to get
have.
you to move for an hour and a half, and now it's the last 30 minutes and you need to eat cake. The birthday girl's gonna have all the fun and open all the presents, and we're gonna leave. And, oh, I did not enjoy birthday parties with that kiddo because it made her clam up, and it was hard.
Mhm.
And then finally, I just got to the point that I was like, "We're not going. We're
Mhm.
just not going. We will celebrate the birthday girl in a private setting and be okay with that.
Right.
It's okay to say no. This does not work for us." And I think a lot of times we're scared to say no because we're like, is everybody going to judge us because we didn't show up in our matching outfits and our fabulously wrapped present and our child wasn't just a joy to be there? And like you said, then you start going, what did I do wrong? Why am I not a
Mhm.
good enough mom? One of the things that you mentioned about being at the park that it would pique your anxiety, this situation that felt defeating and uncontrollable. And so let's pivot a little bit because you also write and speak about anxiety and mental health. And so let's talk about you personally. You said you have experienced anxiety and you also have a kiddo that has some anxious moments. So let's jump right in to children and
Mhm.
anxiety and what is going on.
Yeah. I just want to be totally honest. Like I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist. I just come as someone who has dealt with anxiety really my whole life. But I didn't know the name for it until gosh, into my 30s. And so I called it a lot of different things, stress, overwhelm, PMS, grief.
Mm,
There's things that we go through that can look like a lot of different things, but a lot of it too was rooted for me in feeling like if I just tried harder. I'm going to loop this back to our kids, but if I just tried
mhm,
harder, especially as believers, if I just had more faith, if I just prayed more, then I wouldn't be having these anxious feelings. And anxiety is a word. I think it's also important to say that we can sometimes use the word anxiety to describe a whole spectrum of experiences from like everyday stress and worry, like we all have that kind of anxiety at times, all the way over to a mental illness and a clinical diagnosis. And I think sometimes too, we can think, okay, anxiety is just worry, like just stop worrying. For me and my personal experience, and everyone's is unique, but I'm not really a worrier. But I have physical manifestations of anxiety and the way I hold tension and stress. Even to be totally honest, this morning I woke up and it feels like an adrenaline buzz. Like my skin is crawling, like I want to get outside of my own body. Or it can feel like it's hard to take like a deep breath. Like I can't fill my lungs with enough air. And yet, if I think about, am I worried about something? There's not just like one thing. It's not like, oh, I just need to like surrender this one thing to God and then it will be fixed. And so there's this aspect of a chemical imbalance, or anxiety can cause people to know something and yet not be able to like help their body regulate to match what they know. So I can know like I'm safe, like everything's going to be okay. This feeling is going to pass. It won't always be like this. And so I can know those things cognitively, but then like emotionally and physically, my body is telling me other messages, and that can be hard.
mhm,
So if that all of that can be hard for an adult, I'm now almost 42 and it's still hard for me. And I've been going to therapy and working on this for years. Just imagine how it is for our kids when they are having experiences and emotions that they have a hard time naming or explaining.
mhm,
And so I think
mhm,
one thing that's important for us, and I've been trying to learn as a parent, is oftentimes we just first see the symptom, right? We see a kid who is having a tantrum or a kid who is making a big deal out of something that we're like, that's not a big deal, or a kid who's really angry or maybe defiant. And so we want to just, it's easiest and it's natural to just hone in on that symptom or that behavior. Stop it, get over it. Like you're okay. Stop freaking out. And yet it's important to be aware that there, not for every kid, but there can be more going on.
mhm,
And so I guess that's just something that I'm on a journey of figuring out for myself and for my son. And it plays into what we were talking about before. It can be easy to feel like, oh, like I'm not cut out for this. I don't know what's going on with my kid. Like I'm the parent, like I should know. Sometimes we don't. And our job too as moms, I really believe it's not to fix our kid, but it's to be able to say, I love you. I see that you're struggling. I believe you.
Mhm.
And guess what? Like, I'm going to be here and we're going to find some healthy ways to cope and move through this together.
Yeah, that's such great advice because it is easy for us to jump right into control and fixing and making it
Mhm.
better. But what you just said, anxiety in a child can come out in so many other ways. No child is going to walk up to you and go, I'm feeling anxious today. Like what you just said, it takes a minute for you to cognitively say, I know all of these things, but I feel this way. Where's the disconnect? Can you imagine it that being in young, a 6-year-old body, a 12-year-old body, even a 15-year-old? They don't
Mhm.
have, in a lot of situations, they don't have the language to express how they're feeling. It's coming out in emotions, it's coming out in tantrums, it's coming out in anger. The same kiddo that we were talking about, our son, was we did not realize that he was struggling with anxiety. And so we were doing things as a family and he was rebelling against it and pushing back things that he didn't want to do. Like we would want to go to dinner as a family and he would just throw the biggest fit that he didn't want to go. He's 25 now. So let's back up to 10 or 15 years ago. And this was pre cell phone. This was pre cameras in your home where you could feel safe enough to say, okay, you're 12, stay home. I can check in with you or whatever. It was just a different time. And so, of course, it was no, you have to come. And gosh, there were so many arguments about when we had to go somewhere as a family and he did
Mhm.
not want to go. Okay, that's dinner. That's church. Now we're at a professional baseball game and everybody's excited to be there and he's just freaking out. It
Mhm.
wasn't until he was much older that we realized that this was anxiety, and he did not wanna go because large environments scared him. He felt out of
Mhm.
control, he felt so nervous, and I remember having the conversation, we had gone to an Astros game because we live here in Houston, and everybody had a great time but him.
Mhm.
And I was like and he was a baseball player. So I was like, "He's gonna love this." And I remember saying, "Buddy, did you love it?" And he was like, "No, I didn't like that at all." And then you're offended, like, "I've spent $1,000,000
Right.
to go to this
Like, you
game."
are grateful, yeah.
Yeah, the ice cream was $15 in the little helmet that you insisted on having. What do you mean you didn't have fun? And I think it was then that he was like, "I was just so scared the whole time I was gonna lose you." And I was
Mm.
like, "Lose me? Like, what?" But for him, that's how it felt. We're walking amongst all of these people. There's all this chatter going on. There's strangers everywhere. And though each one of us have a hand of the 6 kids that we have with us, it felt very intimidating and scary for him, and I just remember going, "Oh, I feel horrible. I feel horrible that I took you there." And no, it wasn't fun. He was anxious the whole time. That's not a fun feeling. And so that I think that goes back to what you said early on in this conversation, which is become a student of your child. And
Mhm.
I think that a lot of situations, moms are very much do as I say,
Mhm.
this is how it's gonna be. But really taking that time, what are some ways that you would encourage a mom when you say be a student of your child? What are some ways that moms could do that and really shift their thinking?
Yeah, I think one, I just want to say, even this, I just acknowledge that it can be hard. We are so busy, and I get that it can feel like I don't have a minute to stop and think. Like, I don't have a minute to really reflect. And
Right.
so I'm gonna say, ask God to help you see clearly. Ask him to give you that wisdom. James 1:5 says, if anyone lacks wisdom, they should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to them. And so if you're feeling any of that guilt or shame, like I should have known or I should know how to do this. Nope. Like God is going to give you that wisdom when you ask for it. So that would be number one. But like I said before, evaluating, okay, what are situations where my child is consistently unraveling and looking for those patterns. Oh, it's when we go to birthday parties. Oh,
Mhm.
it's when you are triggered, and for you your trigger might be irritation. It might be you might become angry. You might have that feeling of out of control. For me, oh, every time we go to the park, Or every time I try to take all 3 kids to the grocery store by myself, like, that would be really hard for me because of I would just get overstimulated in my anxiety and 3 kids wanting something, and so try to look for patterns, like, what are the things where you're bumping up against this thing over and over? So, for example, my kiddo who deals with some anxiety, there was a season where he would just unravel every night at bedtime, and
Mm.
I'm thinking like, can you just go to sleep?" Like,
Yeah.
it's the end of the day, like, I've used all my love and patience and compassion, like, I have
Right.
and we would have had a good day, but then all of a sudden at bedtime, he would be just beside himself in tears and drudging up things from the past that I'm like, we dealt with this, like, we're over this. And so it would be very easy for me to, like you said, just with the behavior of, I said it's bedtime. We're not having a conversation. We're not doing this again. Like, you're just going to go to bed. And certainly I believe that there's times where that's what's needed. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes it just is what it is. You can't always address every single thing. But when I started noticing this pattern, and then I could think, okay, what can I do to, instead of it this being another horrible meltdown night, like, what does my kid need from me? How can I help meet him in this place and really see what was going on deeper? And so I started telling him ahead of time, hey, every night before bed, I want you to think about 3 good things in your day. We're going to say 3 things that we are grateful for, because he was so fixated on something that upset him, whether either current or in the past. And so I was like, we need to start training our minds to think about the good. And so we would do that. And so, yeah, just having, I think, a willingness to say, okay, what could be going on underneath the surface for myself or my child? And how could maybe we pivot? We do something slightly different. And unfortunately, a lot of it is trial and error. You just got to be willing to try and see how something's going to work. And it's okay if you try something and it doesn't work. But I think just for our kids to know too, and just to be honest, to say, I don't have all the answers, but I see that you're struggling. Guess what? I'm struggling through this too. I want us to have a good relationship. I want to be there for you. And so we're going to figure this out together. That can be
Mhm.
really powerful.
Yeah, I think the communication is such a key. And I think that I know for like my generation growing up, it was this authoritative figure of I'm mom and I'm dad. And
Mhm.
it wasn't that my feelings didn't matter. They certainly did matter, but there was not a lot. How do you feel about this? And I understand how you're feeling about this. And how could we do things different to ease that worry or that anxiety? And I do think we've come a long way in raising our children and in having more collective communications and it not
Mhm.
being so much I'm mom, I said so. I'm dad, I said so. Like you said, sometimes it's necessary. I had one of those moments last night with a 12-year-old that just didn't want to go to sleep. He's, let's
Right.
watch a movie. I'm like, no, it's a school night. But because we've transitioned to homeschooling, it looks very different now. And so he's, but I don't want to go to bed. And I was like, we are going to go to bed because mom said go to bed. And this, there's nothing to discuss right now. But I do also want to say that I have experienced a child that didn't want to go to sleep. And we did have to look at, okay, what is it that's happening?
Mhm.
And a lot of it was tied to what had to be done the next day.
Mhm.
And it was like, I can have a great day, but if there was something going on the next day that was fueling the anxiety,
Mhm.
then going to sleep and shutting their brain off to the thoughts of what's to come were very difficult and had to be navigated and had to be communicated. And it, like you said, it does take some patience and some time to really chip away at that and say, what is really at the root here and what's going on? I do also, as moms, we tend to, when we're facing these difficult times with our kids or these uncertain times or this defeated feeling, it's so easy for us to mask that. And
Mhm.
especially as believers, it's also easy for us to say, I'm a believer, so I should have it all together because I'm in this fantastic relationship with the Lord. And so then we begin, I find that oftentimes believers are masking more than non-believers because we feel isolated. Oh, if I'm a good Christian, if I'm a good praying mom, this
Mhm.
should not be happening. And so what's my testimony to the world if I'm like, I'm a hot mess and my kid's a hot mess? Have you been in that situation where you wore this mask of it's good, I'm grateful, I'm a great Christian, everything's fine, I've got it all together?
Yeah, I think we all have for sure. But I feel really grateful, Courtney, because I feel like I have had good models of just people in my life, or even someone who I listen to their podcast or I read their book and they are taking off that mask. And I have found how much it means to me. And so, therefore, I regularly try to take off that mask so that I can be that for someone else. I fully
Mhm.
believe in just taking our struggles out of the darkness of isolation and bringing them into the light of that shared experience. Because I remember being a young mom and having a friend over for a play date, and we're sitting on my back porch, and I thought she was a fantastic mom. She was warm, she was funny, and on that back porch, she confessed to me how much she struggled with anger.
Mhm.
And I had never confessed that to someone else myself. She had no idea that I did too. I didn't think I was an angry person until I became a mom and felt out of control. And so I find that I have found so much freedom in my own journey, and then also helping provide that for others by talking really openly about my shortcomings, about my struggles, about things like anxiety and mental health that in the past have been really taboo. I think that culturally we're coming a long way, but
Yeah.
I realize like there's just there's nothing good that comes from playing the role of I have it all together. And also just acknowledging that God doesn't expect us to have it all together, even when we know him. Like Jesus himself, I love how he says in Matthew, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Like he doesn't say, "Come to me like when you have all your crud together. Come to me when you have it
Right.
all figured out." No, like he knows that like on this journey of being a person in a broken world, like we're gonna be weary, we're gonna have burdens. Sometimes burdens that other people lay on us, sometimes burdens of our own making, and we need him. And so I think all the more like our testimony as believers is stronger when we say, even after walking with the Lord for this X number of years, like I still need Jesus every day. And I think it's powerful for our kids to know I am not perfect. I miss the mark. I mess up. Like I need Jesus, and so do you. And let's seek him together.
Mhm. Yeah. Amen to that. That is, yeah, I mess up a lot. And I love that, like what you said, like sharing that with your kid, like letting them know mom is not perfect and mom doesn't always do it perfect, gives them some freedom to realize, oh, okay, it's okay to mess up. Mom
Mhm.
messes up and we can still be loved. We can still be forgiven even in our mess ups because as moms, when we do that, we are modeling the way Jesus loves us. He knows we're going to mess up. That's why he says, come to me if you're weary. He knows we're going to have hard times. And so it's this modeling aspect of, hey, you know what? When you mess up, I forgive you. And I mess up. And will you forgive me? I'm a
Exactly.
big proponent and I haven't always done it. This has evolved in my parenting of being able to go to my kids and say, man, I did not handle that the way
Mhm.
I should have. And will you forgive me? I reacted in anger. I reacted too quickly. I talked when I should have just kept my mouth shut. I had
Yeah.
to do that a few times. So anxiety. We've been talking about that. There are tools, of course, that people can reach and find, like therapy, medication, things like that. But one of the things that you talked about in our questions beforehand was grounding techniques and breath prayer. Will you explain to the listeners what are you talking about with grounding techniques and breath prayer?
Yeah. So, really, grounding techniques means engaging in our five senses in order to bring like the fullness of ourselves, body, mind, spirit back into the present. Because what often will happen with anxiety is we can have this like disassociative experience where our mind is somewhere else or our body is in this fight or flight cycle, and then we try to mentally escape that. And so one thing that can be really helpful is when you are experiencing anxiety, or especially something like a panic attack, but really this is helpful for just any day kind of stress or overwhelm as well, is to ground yourself in the moment. So, for example, like I might sit on my back porch and I might think about how I am feeling the sunshine on my face. And what does that feel like? Can I just be aware of that warmth? And then I will think about, what am I hearing? Oh, I'm hearing a car drive by. Oh, I'm hearing a bird in the tree. And just allow those senses to be like, I'm in this moment. And maybe, what am I smelling? Or I like to make myself a warm cup of tea and just think about that. Okay, I'm tasting like this soothing lemon tea going down my throat. And in this way, it can, again, it doesn't change our bigger circumstance, but by grounding in the moment, being aware of your breath, then you move into your body. And often when we struggle with anxiety, sometimes I realize, like, my neck is all tense, or my shoulders are like hunched up, or sometimes I'll realize I'm holding my breath and I don't even realize it. So then getting into your body and being like, okay, like, where am I holding my tension? And, oh, is my breathing shallow or is it deep? Oh, are my hands clenched? Okay, let me relax them. So all of those things are, they're not like woo, they're not like some like
No.
mystical practice. It's just really saying, okay, Lord, like, you made me body, mind, and spirit. Like, not feeling great. Help me to ground myself in this moment with the senses that you've given me. And often that will bring our parasympathetic nervous system, which goes out of whack with anxiety, bring it back into regulation. And then we can be like, okay, now I'm a little bit more calm and centered, and I can move on to the next thing in my day. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Oh, absolutely. It's actually a technique. So I have a headache disorder.
Mm,
And oh gosh, it was probably 25 years ago whenever it was diagnosed. For many years, it was just like, oh, it's a migraine. But this was different. And then doctors couldn't figure out this isn't your normal migraine. And it happened at certain times every day. And the pain led me to emergency rooms. Anyway, long story short, when we were living in Louisiana at the time and we sought out a specialist in Houston. And so we came and he hospitalized me. And once he diagnosed me, but part of the process was I would have to go into these meditative rooms. And it was exactly what you're saying. It was a grounding technique, and it was somebody that was speaking to me. And so, though I wasn't physically doing what she was saying in the audio recording, it was she would place me in an environment. For instance,
mm,
I remember one was like, you're on an elevator. Now,
mm,
imagine you can decorate the elevator however you want it to look. And she would give you ideas like maybe it's colorful, maybe it's white, maybe it looks like clouds. And she'd walk you through this process of feeling like you were in this space. And then now you're on the 10th floor, and she would walk you down from the 10th floor. What do you hear around you? What do you see around you? What do you feel? Same thing. Release the tension in your hands. And it was all a method to naturally take my body from when I would have this extreme pain from this headache. How do we now calm all of my senses? Because when I have those headaches, of course, lights are brighter than they normally are. Sounds
mm,
are louder. My stomach is in knots. My heart rate is elevated. My body is tense. And so it absolutely makes so much sense. And it worked. It worked. I remember just thinking initially, like you said, this is woo woo. What are we doing here? And then coming home with these recordings, and when I would experience one of the attacks, telling my husband, this was when we had Walkmans, right? We didn't have
uh-huh.
a CD player. We didn't have the fancy iPhone with it on there. And I would just be like, I need to listen to that because it just relaxed me and let me feel the reality of what I was feeling, even if it was painful, but it helped me cope. And
Mhm,
I definitely think this is a technique that would be easy to teach to our children
mhm.
no matter what their age is. You could
Right.
easily take that 3-year-old toddler that's wanting to run around the playground like a wild maniac, take him and say, "Hey, let's go on a walk." And, "Oh, what do you feel under your feet? And what do you hear?" And starting to teach them those techniques because what you just said, it's beneficial to you with your anxiety. And if you do have a child that is struggling with anxiety, you are now teaching them how to cope on their own if, in the event that mom isn't right there to walk them through it. So it's great advice. I want to pivot. You said the 3 spirited boys are now teenagers. How are the teenagers going with spirited boys?
It's really good, sometimes hard. It's
Yeah.
interesting because my oldest, who was my biggest challenge initially, if you would have told me the young man that he would grow into back in those early toddler and preschooler and even early elementary years, and who he would be at 15, I wouldn't have believed you. Like, just Just the maturing and what comes to mind, I just want to share a little story just to encourage someone who's feeling like they're messing up their kid or they're not doing it right. This was several years ago now, but I remember one day my mom came over and we were watching the boys play in the backyard and they were all like playing soccer and if I'm totally honest, I not only felt like I was judging myself in my mothering, but I felt often judged by others. I felt
Mhm.
other people thought like, what's wrong with you? Like, why can't you get these boys to behave? And so there my mom and I are, and we're watching the boys, and she's just looking at them wistfully. And then speaking especially of my oldest son, she says, "You and Chris, my husband," she said, "you guys have done a really good job with him." I think a lot of other parents probably would have accidentally crushed a spirit like his
Mm.
because they were trying to get him to obey. But the grace and wisdom you guys showed has made all the difference.
Oh, wow.
And I just sat there, I think, wiping tears because at the time I felt like I am not doing this kid well. Like I am flailing and probably failing. And yet it was just like that window into God's faithfulness of you are doing well. And so now that kid who was so hard, like he's on honor roll and he's like delightful and just so fun and funny and witty. And I love being a mom of teenagers. And then in the season, one of my other kids has a unique gifting of pushing my buttons. And he is
I like
going
the
to
way you say that. Unique gifting.
And he is a kid who I'm like, who people tell me like, Becky, he's going to be a world changer. He's going to be an entrepreneur. He's going to be all these great things. And I'm like, yes. And right now he's driving me insane. Like, and so there are still challenges, and yet the Lord just keeps bringing me back to ask for my wisdom. Like I did not make a mistake in making you the mom of this kid, and to recognize like as much as it is our job to help train and grow up these young ones, gosh, like they're training and growing us up too. Like
Oh,
they're
yeah.
refining our jagged edges, and so just to trust God in the process. So yeah, it's not, I feel like every stage of motherhood is stretching and it's beautiful and it's challenging. And my encouragement to myself and to you, friends, is don't wish it away. Don't just wish
Mhm.
for the next stage of when they're sleeping through the night, of when they're at school all day, of when they can drive themselves around. Let's not wish away these days, but let's ask God for the wisdom and joy to steward them well and the grace. Heap on the grace because, like, I need it, my
Right.
kids need it, and He's faithful to give it.
Yeah, he is. My 25-year-old, I remember when he was little and we were button heads all the time, and I used to think, "He's gonna hate me. He's gonna grow up. He's gonna grow up and be like, I don't ever wanna be around this woman," because I was so tough on him, and a good part of that was me trying to get him to conform to what I thought he needed to be and what I thought made me look best as his mom,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
as a person, because this is my identity, right? A mom, and if you aren't good enough, then I'm not good enough and I'm doing a really poor job. And so I did. I used to have feelings sometimes like he is going to grow up and he's going to move to a faraway land and be like, that woman is crazy. Now, he has grown up. He does not live in a faraway land. He lives about 15 minutes from me. Would he attest that I'm crazy? Probably. But you know what? In all the best ways. But he's a sweetheart. He is an absolute sweetheart. He is one of my most compassionate kids. He is
Mhm.
the one that every time he calls or I call, it's always, I love you. It makes me want to cry because I'm just like, man, I was not the best mom for you,
Mhm.
but you taught me so much about being a better mom for everybody else. And you have become such a good man. And so it is so, I look at that and I think, you know what? Praise God that in all of my weakness and all of my flaws, God showed up and has created this man to be exactly who he wanted him to be. And all that stubbornness and everything else, in a lot of cases, has very much worked to his benefit now
Mhm.
as an adult. And it's a good message for mamas to hear. Like each season brings its own challenges, but also its own rewards. And so just keep turning to God for the wisdom that you need in those trying circumstances. I close out each episode with something that you are praying for that we can join in with you on prayer, and a verse that you would like to share with the listeners?
Yeah. So one thing that I have been praying regularly these days is comes from Zechariah 4:6. And it says, "Not by strength or by might, but by my spirit, says the Lord of armies." Not by
Mm,
strength or by might, but by my spirit. That is God's heart for us. And so I pray that over myself as in my motherhood, also just in my work life and in my friendships. And I think often as women, we struggle because we care so much. Like it's because you care so much about your kids and about your marriage and about your ministry or whatever the things that that consume your days. It's because that we care so much that we want to try so hard. And yet what the Lord has just been bringing me back to is, Becky, like it's by my spirit. Like you're not going to raise these kids by your strength or by your might, but by my spirit.
mm,
And that's also his promise that we can lean on. That it doesn't all it's not all up to us, but really just every day saying, Lord, how can I walk with you? What are you doing? How can I partner with you and help me to continue to rely on your spirit and your strength and not my own?
mm. Yes, that